Ambassador Eth stood at the observation window of his ship and watched the blue planet grow larger. Earth. The humans called it Earth. Such a simple name for such a simple world. He had studied the reports during his journey. The humans had finally built ships that could travel faster than light. This made them eligible for contact with the Galactic Concord. The Concord was an alliance of 12 ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for 60,000 years. Every new species had to be evaluated and given a proper role in galactic society. His people were tall and elegant, with silver skin and 4 arms. They had served as diplomats and judges for 10,000 years. It was his job to assess humanity and decide where they belonged in the great order of things. The assessment did not take long. Eth walked among the humans in their largest city. He watched them with careful eyes. They were soft creatures. Their skin tore easily. They had no claws, no fangs, no poison glands. They could not see in the dark. They could not breathe underwater. A slight change in temperature could kill them. A small infection could kill them. Almost anything could kill them. He watched a human child fall and scrape its knee. The child cried. It actually cried from such a tiny wound. Eth felt something close to pity. Back on his ship, he reviewed the biological data. Humans lived for less than 100 years. They slept for a third of their lives. They needed to eat multiple times every day. They were slow. They were weak. By every measurement the Concord used, humans were among the most fragile intelligent species ever discovered. The Assessment Council met in a great chamber aboard the Concord's diplomatic station. Representatives from all 12 elder species sat in their designated places. Eth presented his findings. The humans are unsuitable for military service, he announced. They lack natural weapons and have poor physical capabilities. They are unsuitable for scientific roles. Their technology is primitive and their understanding of the universe is basic. They are unsuitable for diplomatic positions. They are emotional and irrational. A general shifted in his seat. There were the Concord's warriors. They stood 3 meters tall and were covered in natural armor. Their claws could cut through metal. What about their history? The general asked. The reports mention constant warfare among themselves. Eth made a dismissive gesture with 2 of his hands. Primitive infighting. They fight over resources, territory, and ideological differences. It is the mark of an unspecialized species. They have no unity because they have no clear purpose. They do not know what they are. The council discussed for a short time. The decision was easy. Humanity would be classified as laborers, 3rd class. They would be given mining rights to a single barren system at the edge of the galaxy. It was more than they deserved, really. The Concord was being generous. The human delegation was brought before the council to receive the news. Eth studied them with mild curiosity. There were 5 of them, 3 men and 2 women. They wore simple uniforms and stood with straight backs. The leader was a woman named Sarah. She held the rank of commander in something called the United Earth Defense Force. Eth found it amusing that humans had a defense force. What could they possibly defend against? When the council announced humanity's classification, Commander stepped forward. Her face was calm, but Eth could see tension in her shoulders. With respect, she said, we reject this classification. Humanity will not accept a subordinate role in galactic affairs. We have just as much right to full membership as any species here. Silence fell over the chamber. Several council members exchanged glances of disbelief. In 60,000 years, no species had ever rejected their assigned role. Eth rose from his seat and approached the human woman. He towered over her. She did not step back. Commander, he said, keeping his voice patient and kind, you do not understand how the galaxy works. The Concord has maintained peace for longer than your species has existed. We have done this through order, through hierarchy. Every species has a role suited to their nature. The fight, the negotiate, the build. This is the way of things. Maybe your way of things needs to change, replied. Eth allowed himself a small smile. "You are young, your whole species is young. In time you will learn your place, all species do." He gestured to the guards. "Return them to their ship. Give them the coordinates to their assigned system. This assessment is complete." As the humans were escorted out, Eth noticed that Commander looked back at him. There was something in her eyes that he could not quite identify. Not anger, not fear, something else. He forgot about it almost immediately. There were more important matters to attend to. Reports had been coming in from the outer dark, the vast empty region beyond the galaxy's edge. Something was stirring there, something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years. The devouring swarm. The swarm was not like other species. It was a hive mind, a single consciousness controlling trillions of creatures. It did not negotiate, it did not trade, it did not make peace. It simply consumed. Every world it touched became food. Every species it encountered became biomass for new swarm creatures. The last time the swarm had awakened, it had taken the combined might of the conquered 500 years to push it back into the darkness. Millions had died. Entire species had been wiped out. Now the swarm was returning. The council held emergency meetings. They began mobilizing their warrior fleets. The other military species prepared their forces. Ancient weapons were brought out of storage. Defense lines were drawn. No one thought to inform the humans. Why would they? The humans were laborers, miners. What could they possibly contribute to a war against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known? Eth assigned the humans to their barren system and then put them out of his mind entirely. He had real problems to deal with. He did not know that he had just made the greatest mistake of his career. He did not know that the soft, weak, fragile humans were about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. And he certainly did not know that Commander Sarah was already reading the classified reports about the swarm that human intelligence officers had intercepted. She was already planning, already preparing. Because humans had one trait that Eth had failed to notice in his assessment. One trait that did not show up in biological scans or historical analyses. Humans never accepted their place. They never had, they never would. 18 months passed. The war against the swarm was going badly. The conquered's fleets were powerful, their warriors were strong, but the swarm was endless. For every creature they killed, 10 more took its place. For every hive ship destroyed, 3 more emerged from the darkness. They were collapsing. Station was a major trade hub near the border regions. 12,000 civilians lived there. Merchants, scientists, families from a dozen different species. When the swarm surrounded the station, they had nowhere to run. The distress call went out to every ship in the sector. "Help us, please help us. The swarm is here." The conquered military did the calculations. Station was behind enemy lines now. A rescue mission would require a major fleet. That fleet was needed elsewhere. The numbers did not work. General Eth of the High Command made the decision. Station was lost. The civilians would be sacrificed. It was unfortunate but necessary. This was war. The order went out. No rescue, no attempt. Right off the station and focus on defendable positions. Commander Sarah received the order aboard her small ship. She was stationed 2 systems away from. Her ship was a converted mining vessel. Her crew was not soldiers. They were workers who had been assigned to extract minerals from dead moons. She read the order. She looked at her crew. Then she turned off the communications panel. "We are going to station," she said. Her first officer, a man named David Park, stared at her. "Commander, that order came from the High Command. We would be disobeying direct orders." "I am aware. We have 47 people, 2 shuttles, mining equipment. The swarm has thousands of creatures surrounding that station." "I am aware of that too." Park was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. "What is the plan?" pulled up the station blueprints on her screen. The swarm attacks from the main entry points. They overwhelm defenders with numbers, but they think like predators. They focus on obvious targets and ignore anything that seems unimportant. She pointed to a section of the blueprint. Maintenance tunnels, waste disposal systems, emergency vents. The swarm will not be watching these areas. You want us to crawl through the garbage systems. I want us to save 12,000 people. Are you in or out? Every single member of her crew volunteered. The approach to station was terrifying. Swarm creatures filled the space around it like a cloud of locusts. Two shuttles were tiny specks in that swarm. They powered down all unnecessary systems. They drifted like debris. The swarm ignored them. They entered the station through a waste disposal port. The smell was terrible. No one complained. Inside the station, chaos ruled. The main halls were overrun with swarm creatures. The surviving civilians had retreated to the central sections. They had barricaded themselves in and were waiting to die. Split her crew into teams. They moved through the maintenance tunnels, mapping the station and counting enemy positions. They found the civilians and made contact. "Who are you?" asked a merchant, his silver skin pale with fear. "Where are the warriors?" "They are not coming," said. "We are what you have." The merchant looked at the small group of humans. He saw their soft skin and their simple weapons. "We are dead," he whispered. "Not yet," replied. The siege lasted 11 days. The humans did something that the conquered observers later watched on security footage with disbelief. They did not try to win. They did not try to push back the swarm. They simply refused to lose. They fought in shifts. When one group was exhausted, another took their place. They slept in rotations, never more than a few at a time. The swarm attacked constantly, but there was always someone awake, always someone fighting. They built traps from station equipment. They created in the corridors. They used mining explosives to collapse tunnels and seal off sections. They turned the station into a maze that the swarm could not navigate. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they made new weapons. They sharpened metal pipes. They created flamethrowers from fuel tanks. They used maintenance drones as mobile bombs. A conquered observer drone recorded a moment that became famous across the galaxy. A human named was fighting at a barricade when a swarm creature tore into his left arm. The arm was ruined, useless. Blood poured from the wound. Looked at his arm. He tied a piece of cloth above the wound to stop the bleeding. Then he picked up his weapon with his right hand and kept firing. He fought for 6 more hours before he allowed anyone to treat him. The warriors who watched the footage could not understand. When I was injured, they entered a healing trance. Their body shut down to repair itself. This was natural. This was correct. But the humans did not shut down. They did not stop. They simply continued, as if pain was something they could choose to ignore. On the 8th day was wounded. A piece of metal cut across her face, barely missing her eye. She wrapped a bandage around her head and returned to command. Her crew begged her to rest. "I will rest when they are safe," she said, pointing to the civilians they were protecting. On the 11th day, conquered reinforcements finally arrived. A battle fleet broke through the swarm and reached the station. They expected to find corpses. Instead, they found 47 humans. 31 were still alive. They were exhausted. They were wounded. They were covered in blood, some their own and some belonging to the swarm. And they were still fighting. The warriors stood in silence as the humans finally lowered their weapons, stepped forward, swaying slightly from exhaustion. "We held the station," she said. "The civilians are safe, all 10,000 of them." The commander looked at the small human woman. He looked at her bandaged face, her exhausted crew, the improvised weapons they had built. He looked at the piles of dead swarm creatures that filled the corridors. He did not know what to say. Eth received the battle footage 3 days later. He watched it alone in his quarters. He watched it 3 times. On the 4th viewing, he noticed something that made his blood turn cold. The humans had not fought with desperation. Their tactics were not improvised by amateurs. They moved like soldiers. They thought like strategists. They adapted like predators. This was not luck. This was not courage born from fear. This was practice. The humans had been preparing for this kind of war their entire existence, not against the swarm, against each other, against extinction, against anything that tried to destroy them. For the first time in his long career, Eth felt afraid of a species he had dismissed as weak. He began to research human history. What he found would keep him awake for many nights. The Galactic Council was worried, not about the war. They were worried about the humans. The footage from Station had spread across every world in the Conquered. Everyone had seen what 47 humans had done against impossible odds. Everyone was asking the same question. What were these creatures? The council ordered a full investigation. They assigned their best researcher, a historian named to study humanity, was ancient even by Conquered standards. He had studied 1,000 species. He thought he understood intelligent life. He was wrong. Began with human biology. He expected to find nothing impressive. Instead, he found nightmares. The first discovery was something called persistence predation. On Earth, humans were not the fastest creatures. They were not the strongest. They could not fly. They could not climb like monkeys or swim like fish. Every animal on their planet could outrun them. But humans did not need to outrun their prey. Humans would pick a target and follow it. The target would run away. Humans would follow. The target would run again. Humans would follow. This would continue for hours, sometimes days. Other predators attacked with speed and strength. Humans attacked with patience. They simply refused to stop. Eventually, their prey would collapse from exhaustion. Then the humans would walk up to it and kill it. Read this report 3 times. He could not believe it. No other intelligent species had evolved this way. The psychological implications were terrifying. Humans were built to never give up. It was in their blood, in their bones. The second discovery was adrenaline. When humans were threatened, their bodies released a chemical that made them temporarily stronger, faster, and almost immune to pain. This was similar to the battle rage that warriors had to be specially bred for. Humans had it naturally, every single one of them. The third discovery was sleep deprivation. Most species in the Conquered became unable to function without regular sleep. Their bodies simply shut down, but humans could push through exhaustion for days. Their performance decreased, but they did not stop. They could choose to ignore their body's need for rest. The fourth discovery was diet. Humans could eat almost anything: meat, plants, fungi, insects. When food was scarce, they had been known to eat leather, bark, and even each other. While the Conquered species required specific foods to survive, humans could adapt to almost any environment. But the worst discovery was human history. Accessed Earth's historical records. He started reading. After 3 days, he had to stop and seek medical treatment for psychological distress. The humans had been at war with themselves for their entire existence. Not small wars, not ritual combat like the Conquered practiced, total wars, extinction wars. He read about something called World War II. In 6 years, the humans killed 60 million of their own kind. They built weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. They developed poisons that could kill thousands with a single breath. They invented ways to kill that the Conquered had never imagined. And then, just 30 years later, they were ready to do it again. The humans had created weapons capable of ending all life on their planet. They pointed these weapons at each other. For decades, they lived with the knowledge that their species could be erased at any moment. But they did not destroy themselves. They pulled back from the edge. They chose survival. This was what frightened most of all. The humans knew what they were capable of. They had looked into the darkness inside themselves. They had seen the monster. And they had learned to control it. Presented his findings to the council. His hands were shaking. His voice was unsteady. "We made a mistake," he said. "We classified humans as weak because they are not specialized. We were wrong. They are not weak. They are the opposite of weak." He displayed images on the council chamber's screens. Human soldiers, human weapons, human history. "The conquered create specialists," he continued. "We breed warriors, we breed diplomats, we breed scientists. We optimize each species for a single purpose. This makes us efficient. It also makes us predictable. A warrior is terrifying, but a warrior can only fight. If you remove them from combat, they are useless." He pointed to an image of a human. "Humans are generalists. They can do everything. Not as well as our specialists, but they can do everything. A human can fight in the morning, build a shelter in the afternoon, and create art in the evening. They adapt to any situation. They learn any skill. They refuse to be limited." A general stood up. "You are saying that humans are more dangerous than my warriors." "I am saying that your warriors are swords," replied. "Humans are water. A sword can cut. Water can become ice or steam. It can wear down mountains. It can fit into any container. It can give life or take it. You cannot defeat water with a sword." The council chamber was silent. "There is more," said. "I analyzed the footage from station. The humans did not fight like survivors. They fought like they had been training for extinction warfare their entire lives, and they have. Their history is nothing but extinction warfare, against nature, against animals, against each other. They have been preparing for this moment for 200,000 years." He paused. "When we gave them FTL technology, we thought we were uplifting a primitive species. We were not. We were unleashing the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." The council demanded solutions, had none. "We cannot defeat them," he said simply. "Not because they are stronger, because they will never stop. You can kill a human, you can kill 1,000 humans, you can kill 1,000,000, the rest will keep coming. They will learn from every death. They will adapt to every tactic. And eventually they will win. That is what they do. That is all they have ever done." At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The swarm had launched its largest attack in recorded history. 3 conquered battle fleets had been destroyed in a single engagement. The defensive lines were collapsing. For the first time in 60,000 years, the elder races faced the real possibility of extinction. The council looked at each other in horror. They were out of options. Their warriors were failing. Their strategies were useless. Eth stood slowly. He knew what had to be done. He hated it, but he knew. "We need to contact the humans," he said. "We need to ask for their help." The silence that followed was the sound of galactic history changing forever. The conquered delegation arrived at Earth expecting to negotiate with a primitive species. They were not prepared for what they found. Admiral Sarah, formerly commander, met them in orbit. Behind her, through the windows of the meeting room, Eth could see human ships, hundreds of them, thousands. They had been building in secret ever since first contact. Eth felt a cold weight in his stomach. The humans had known this day would come. They had been preparing. "Admiral," he said, keeping his voice formal, "the Galactic Conquered requests military assistance against the devouring swarm. We offer full partnership and equal membership in return." He expected her to gloat. He expected anger. He expected demands for revenge after how the Conquered had treated humanity. Simply nodded, "Show us the enemy." That was all. No speeches, no conditions, no pride. The humans wanted to see the threat. They wanted to get to work. Eth showed her everything, the swarm's movements, their attack patterns, the fallen systems, the death counts. Watched in silence, her officers took notes. "You have been fighting them wrong," she said when the presentation ended. "Excuse me," the general with the delegation stiffened. We have fought the swarm for, we know how to defeat them. You know how to contain them, corrected. You do not know how to destroy them. There is a difference. She stood and walked to the display screen. With a few commands, she changed the view. You treat the swarm like an enemy army. You meet them in battle. You try to kill their warriors, but the swarm is not an army. It is an ecology, a living system. You do not fight an ecology. You collapse it. The conquered officers looked confused, explained. Every ecology has weak points: food sources, breeding grounds, communication networks. You have been attacking swarm warriors because warriors are what you understand, but swarm warriors are replaceable. You can kill billions of them and the swarm will make more. She highlighted several points on the map. These are swarm resource processing centers. These are breeding clusters. This is their communication web. Attack these and the warriors become useless. They will not know where to go. They will not have food. They will not be able to reproduce. The swarm collapses. The general shook his head. Those targets are deep inside swarm territory. Our fleets cannot reach them. Your fleets cannot, agreed. Ours can. She changed the display again. This time it showed human military doctrine, strike teams, guerrilla tactics, sabotage operations, psychological warfare. You fight with honor, said. You form battle lines and meet your enemies face to face. This is admirable. It is also predictable. The swarm knows exactly what you will do because you have been doing the same thing for 10,000 years. She smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Humans do not fight with honor. We fight to win. We attack supply lines. We destroy infrastructure. We create confusion. We make the enemy fear sleeping. We make them fear eating. We make them fear every shadow because any shadow might contain death. Ed thought about human history. The tactics described were the same tactics humans had used against each other: terrorism, sabotage, asymmetric warfare. The conquered considered such methods dishonorable. The humans considered them effective. Humanity mobilized for war, but not the way the conquered expected. Eth watched the recruitment process with growing unease. Among the conquered species, only the warrior castes fought. They were bred for battle. Other species were protected. This was civilized. This was proper. Humans had no warrior caste. When the call went out for volunteers, everyone answered. Teachers, engineers, artists, scientists, parents. Children asked to join. They were told to wait. Every human was a potential soldier. They had all grown up learning their species' violent history. They had all played games that simulated warfare. They had all been taught, at some deep level, that peace was temporary and survival required strength. The conquered had bred warriors for. The humans had been breeding warriors for 200,000 years without even knowing it. The Battle of Nexus Prime came 3 months later. The Conquered's combined fleet met the swarm's main hive cluster at a system called Nexus Prime. It was the largest military engagement in galactic history. Billions of swarm creatures, thousands of warships. The fate of intelligent life hung in the balance. The conquered forces fought as they always had: formation combat, direct engagement, honor and glory. The humans fought differently. While the main fleets battled, human strike teams slipped past the fighting. Small ships, 20 people each. They carried special weapons designed by human engineers. They had trained for this mission for months. The first strike team hit a swarm communications node. They destroyed the organic relay that allowed the hive mind to coordinate. Suddenly, millions of swarm creatures lost contact with each other. They became confused, disorganized. The second strike team hit a breeding cluster. They deployed weapons that humans had invented long ago for use against each other: biological agents, poisons, things the conquered considered too horrible to use. The breeding cluster died. No more reinforcements would come from that sector. The third strike team found the swarm queen. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. The team members had volunteered anyway. They flew their ship directly into the Queen's chamber and detonated their entire weapons supply. The explosion killed the Queen and everything within 1,000 kilometers. The team did not survive. But they did not need to survive. They only needed to win. With the Queen dead and the communications destroyed, the swarm fell into chaos. For the first time in its existence, it faced an enemy that did not play by ecological rules, an enemy that sacrificed its own members to achieve victory, an enemy that did not fight to survive, but to make its enemy not survive. In the final hours of the battle, another swarm queen tried to communicate with. The swarm had never attempted communication before. It was desperate. "What are you?" it asked through translators. "You are not like the others. You are not predator. You are not prey. What are you?" Looked at the creature on her screen. She thought about human history, about the endless wars, about the darkness her species carried inside them, about the light they had found anyway. "We are what happens when prey refuses to stay prey," she said. The swarm queen stared at her for a long moment. Then it retreated. The remaining swarm creatures followed. They fled into the outer dark, broken and afraid. The war was not over. The swarm would return someday. But on that day, at that moment, the humans had done what the conquered could not. They had taught the galaxy's greatest predator to fear. Eth watched the battle footage later. He watched the suicide teams. He watched the tactics that the conquered considered dishonorable. He watched humans sacrifice themselves without hesitation. He finally understood what made humans so dangerous. It was not their adaptability. It was not their endurance. It was not their creativity. It was their willingness to pay any price for victory. The conquered species valued their lives. They calculated acceptable losses. They retreated when the cost became too high. Humans did not calculate the same way. When humans decided something was worth fighting for, they did not stop until it was won or they were all dead, and sometimes not even then. This was terrifying. This was magnificent. Eth began to understand why the universe had created such a species, and he began to fear what would happen when the war was over and the humans had no common enemy. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Nexus Prime. The galaxy was rebuilding, but peace brought new problems. The Conquered Council met to discuss the human question. It was the most important debate in 60,000 years. The High Commander spoke first. "The humans must be contained. They are too dangerous. We have all seen what they can do. Today they are our allies. Tomorrow they could be our conquerors. We should act now while we still can." Several council members nodded. Fear of humanity had spread through the elder races. The swarm had been a known threat. The humans were unknown, unpredictable. This made them more frightening. "How would you contain them?" asked a diplomat. "We have seen their military capabilities. We have seen their determination. A war against humanity would be worse than the war against the swarm. They would never surrender. They would fight until one side was completely destroyed." "Then we destroy them first," they said. "A quick strike while they are still few, before they spread to more worlds, before they become unstoppable." Eth stood. He was old now, older than he had been when he first met the humans. The years of war had changed him. "I was the one who assessed humanity," he said. "I classified them as weak and primitive. I was wrong. More wrong than anyone in conquered history has ever been. I do not intend to make another mistake." He looked around the council chamber. "We created warrior species through of careful breeding. We shaped the into perfect soldiers. It took us 10,000 years. The universe created humans through 4 billion years of evolution. They are not our warriors. They are not our servants. They are something new." He paused. "Something we cannot control, something we cannot defeat. We can only make them our partners or our enemies. There is no third option." "You suggest we give them equal status?" The commander sounded disgusted. They have been part of the galactic community for less than a decade. We have earned our positions over. They earned their position at Station, Eth replied. They earned it at Nexus Prime. They earned it with the blood of their soldiers and the lives of their children. What more would you have them pay? The debate continued for hours, days, weeks. The galaxy waited. Admiral Sarah arrived at the council on the final day of debate. She had been invited to address the assembly. Many council members wanted to see the famous human warrior. They wanted to understand what made her species so dangerous. Walked to the speaker's platform. She was not young anymore. Gray streaked her hair. Scars marked her face and hands, but her eyes were clear and her voice was strong. I know what you fear, she said. You look at human history and see violence. You see wars that killed millions. You see weapons that could destroy worlds. You see a species that almost annihilated itself a dozen times, and you are right to fear. We are violent. We have done terrible things to each other, to our world, to ourselves. She paused, but you miss what that violence taught us. The council chamber was silent, continued. We fought because we had not yet learned to live with our differences. We killed because we were afraid. We destroyed because we did not understand. Every war taught us something. Every tragedy made us wiser. We are still learning. We will always be learning. She looked at each council member in turn. We came to the stars hopping to find wisdom we lacked. We hoped that older species would have answers we had not discovered. Instead, we found a galaxy that had never learned what we were forced to learn. You avoid conflict through hierarchy, through separation, through control. You keep peace by making sure species never have to truly live together. That is not peace, she said. That is just postponed war. A murmur ran through the chamber, raised her hand. True peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to resolve conflict without destruction. Humans learned this the hard way. We learned that cooperation is not weakness. We learned that understanding your enemy is more powerful than defeating them. We learned that the greatest strength is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to build something worth protecting. She straightened her shoulders. You fear us because we are dangerous. You are right to fear, but understand this. We did not survive because we were the strongest. We did not survive because we were the fastest We survived because when one of us falls, another picks up the torch. When our cities burned, we built new ones. When our nations fell, we raised new flags over the ashes. Her voice grew stronger. We are not dangerous because we can destroy. We are dangerous because we refuse to be destroyed. And now that we have found you, we will fight just as hard for your survival as we fought for our own. That is what humans do. We protect. We endure. We never give up. She stepped back from the platform. That is why we are the galaxy's most fearsome warriors. Not because we love war, but because we will never, ever give up on peace. The council voted that day. The decision was close. But when the results were announced, humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Concord, equal representation, equal rights, equal responsibility. After the vote, Eth found standing alone by a window. She was looking out at the stars. I thought your species was a mistake of evolution, he said. A random accident that produced fragile creatures on an insignificant world. I was wrong. Smiled slightly. We get that a lot. I understand now, Eth continued. The universe did not make you weak. It made you adaptable. It did not make you peaceful. It made you learn the value of peace through war. You are evolution's answer to extinction, a species that simply refuses to accept it. Maybe, said, or maybe we are just stubborn. Eth made a sound that humans would eventually learn was laughter. Perhaps that is the same thing. They stood together for a while, watching the stars. Two species that had been enemies. Two species that had become allies. Two species that might someday become friends. On the observation deck below, children were playing. Human children, children. A dozen species learning to live together, learning to trust each other, Learning that different did not mean dangerous. The elder races watched with uncertain eyes. They had ruled the galaxy for 60,000 years. Now they would have to share it with a species that refused to know its place. A species that questioned everything. A species that never stopped pushing forward. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was the beginning of something new. Watched the children play. She thought about the humans who had died at Station, at Nexus Prime, in all the battles before and after. They had not died for victory. They had died for this, for a future where children of all species could play together without fear. That was the human way: fight hard, sacrifice everything, then build something beautiful from the ashes. In the vast halls of the Galactic Concord, where 60,000 years of history whispered from every wall, a new sound echoed. Human laughter, mixing with alien voices, learning the oldest lesson the universe had to teach. Survival meant nothing without someone to survive for. The galaxy would never be the same. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what it needed.